All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're turning a welcome back, please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A board game group wants to reduce their habit of slamming down cards. They decide that every time someone slams a card, they must take the same card and repeatedly slam it on the table 10 more times on purpose while the group watches. After a few rounds of this, slamming drastically decreases. Which procedure has the group employed? So we do a lot of procedure questions during our BCBA practice question series because it's a good review of our different terms and ideas in real situations. So when we're going through these questions, we want to start identifying what is the question giving us that is going to help us get to the answer. We know the board game group wants to reduce a behavior, slamming down cards, and they decide that they're going to make whoever slams the card, the target behavior, they're going to make them do that behavior 10 more times on purpose. So immediately, if we see a scenario where we're having the learner or the person engage in the wrong behavior over and over again, well, that's going to be a very specific idea of punishment. And we know it was effective as a punisher because slamming drastically decreases. So when we make someone engage in the incorrect behavior over and over and over again, what are we looking for? And now, when we break it down like that, it's just a definition question. So, A, positive practice over correction. Positive practice is the opposite. Positive practice, we're going to have whoever it is engage in the correct behavior over and over again. Here we want the incorrect behavior. Therefore, it's going to be negative practice over correction. And you'll find that a lot of the questions on your exam and on practice exams, if you break down the information given, a lot of times now you're just answering a definition. If we look at C and D, they both have to do with group contingencies. And yes, we are in a group, but a group contingency is looking at the group's behavior as a whole, typically, and then making that behavior the contingency for typically earning a reinforcer. Not what's happening here, right? We're just looking at the singular person, and if that singular person slams down a card, they've got to do that behavior over and over again. So what we're looking at here is negative practice over correction. Maybe you could argue independent group contingency because the person, whoever does the behavior, their response or the negative practice over correction procedure is contingent on the behavior, but the best answer is going to be B, and we always want to pick the best answer. Elias is the contract coder who earns a bonus after completing a certain number of high priority tickets. Initially, he receives a bonus for every 5 tickets completed. Encouraged by the increase in productivity, management increases the requirement to 25 tickets. Suddenly, Elias works more slowly and even takes extra breaks. His rate of completed tickets drops below baseline. What likely occurred? Okay, another great example of a longer question, a lot of information, but if we attack it, you're going to find it's just a definition. So we know Elias earns a bonus after completing a certain number of high priority tickets, and that number is 5 tickets completed. So our reinforcement schedule there is a fixed ratio of 5. Every 5 responses, you get reinforcement. Encouraged because it was successful, management goes to 25 tickets. So we've moved from an FR5 to an FR25. Immediately start thinking that's a large jump in reinforcement requirement or effort, right? We're going from 5 responses to 25 responses. We've thinned that schedule very, very quickly. As a result, what happens? Well, Elias is working more slowly and taking extra breaks. It's a lot harder for Elias to get that bonus now that he's got to complete 20 more tickets. So when we thin a reinforcement schedule and the learner's effort or responses suddenly drop, in this case below baseline, well, what is that called? Again, now we're just answering a definition. A, Elias becomes frustrated with the response effort required to gain the bonus. So be careful. Are we ever going to describe an answer or answer with frustrated? No, because frustrated is not telling us what happened. That is not a procedure. It's not a term we use. We're not going to describe something as frustrated. Do we know Elias is frustrated? No, nothing in the question says he's frustrated. We just know he's working more slowly and taking extra breaks. So A is just not a good answer at all from a behavior analyst. B, Elias was positive punished by the 25 ticket requirement. Well, there's no indication that the requirement would be the punishment, right? Because the requirement is already set before Elias starts working. And so they're not punishing him with the 25 ticket requirement. If anything, that's an antecedent strategy to get Elias to work harder and harder. That's just the reinforcement schedule in FR 25. So that's not going to work as a positive punisher because it's not the punishment being delivered. Regardless, C is going to be the better answer because it's exactly what's happening. Elias is experiencing ratio strain. Ratio strain occurs when we thin a schedule too quickly or increase the response effort too quickly, and as a result, productivity or response goes down. So Elias, the shift from 5 to 25, too much. Elias works more slowly. He starts to go below baseline. This is most likely ratio strain. The reinforcement schedule was thickened too quickly. Well, we know it wasn't thickened. We went from an FR5 to an FR25. The schedule was thinned. What likely occurred? C, Elias is experiencing ratio strain. Davina, who wears noise-canceling headphones at work, begins tapping her pen loudly on the desk whenever she becomes stressed. The office manager notices this distraction. Rather than ignoring the behavior, the manager places a hand over Davina's pen hand as soon as she raises it to tap, preventing contact with the desk. Over time, Davina's pen tapping frequency diminishes. What procedure is the manager using? So what do we know so far? We know Davina is tapping her pen loudly when she's stressed, okay? We know that the office manager doesn't ignore the behavior, but instead he stops the behavior from happening. He puts a hand over Davina's as soon as she raises it to tap and prevents the tapping from occurring. So when we stop a response from happening at all, what is that called? Well, it's a response block, right? And we want to be very careful about mixing up response blocking and extinction. Can response blocking be extinction? In very specific instances. But typically, in order to engage in extinction or execute extinction, the response has to happen. If we're not allowing the behavior to happen at all, how can we withhold reinforcement? So by blocking the behavior from happening at all, the response has been blocked. And it was actually effective because the pen tapping went down. So what procedure are we looking at here? A, positive punishment. Well, sure. As a result of Davina raising her hand, the consequence is the manager stops the behavior from happening. So he's adding his contact to the environment, which is diminishing or decreasing the behavior. That's going to be positive punishment. Now, A looks good, but we never stop at one answer choice. We read every answer choice. If we look at B, that's what we predicted. Well, response blocking is a positive punishment procedure. So it's going to be both of these. Never stop at the first answer that looks good. You want to read every answer choice every time. Negative punishment will be the removal of something that decreases it. Well, we're not removing anything. The manager is adding the contact, preventing the behavior from happening. He's positively punishing it, the behavior decreased. And more specifically, he's using a response blocking strategy. So our answer here is going to be both A and B. The entire morning, Delilah fights with her parents about getting dressed and going to school. Everything she is asked to do, she protests. Then, once Delilah gets to school and sees her teachers, she is a perfect angel. What would describe the effect the teacher has on Delilah's behavior? I think this question is a great example of this idea, right? We're looking at the teacher's effect on Delilah's behavior. We know the whole morning, Delilah fights about getting dressed and going to school and everything else. And if you have kids, maybe you can relate. If you know kids in the morning, maybe you can relate. Kids fight, right? They don't want to get dressed, they don't eat, so on and so forth. She's just protesting constantly. But she gets to school, and what happens? Well, she's a perfect angel once she sees her teachers. Why? What has occurred, or what effect does the teacher have on Delilah's behavior? Well, the teacher has stimulus control over Delilah's behavior. Stimulus control just says, in the presence of a stimulus, in this case, the teacher or teachers, Delilah's behavior is going to change. The teacher has stimulus control over Delilah's behavior. Differential reinforcement, that is not the effect the teacher has on Delilah's behavior. Did the teacher potentially use differential reinforcement? Maybe, but that's not the effect. That would be the procedure, right, or the intervention. C, stimulus discrimination. That would be if we have a field, right, we can pick the correct stimulus out of a field of stimuli. That's not the effect the teacher has on the behavior. And stimulus generalization is when we have a response occurring in the presence of multiple stimuli. Again, not the effect the teacher has on Delilah's behavior. We're looking specifically at what happens when Delilah gets in the presence of the teacher. Her behavior changes. The teacher has stimulus control on that behavior. We're always trying to establish stimulus control over behaviors we want to see, and so we can actually control the behavior of our learners. Differential reinforcement is used in several different situations in practice, guided by applied behavior analysis. Which of the following skills or behaviors is not something we would target or teach using differential reinforcement? So we have a pretty straightforward differential reinforcement question here, and it's a not question, right? So we're trying to look for something we wouldn't teach with differential reinforcement. And differential reinforcement is typically going to involve some sort of reinforcement strategy and an extinction strategy. So we're going to target something for extinction and something for reinforcement. And through differential reinforcement, we can do a lot of different things and teach a lot of different skills. Let's look at a child at school selecting the correct backpack off the backpack shelf at the end of the day. Well, if we have backpacks 1, 2, and 3, and we want child to select 2, we're going to put these on extinction if they select it and reinforce for 2. Looks like a good use for differential reinforcement. Be a musician playing a piece of music slower to match the required tempo. Well, if the musician plays at 90 beats versus 120 beats versus 75 beats, well, we're going to reinforce the correct pace, right? So we can teach stimulus discrimination. We can teach response differentiation with differential reinforcement. What about C? A bartender pouring the correct amount of alcohol into each drink that they make. Again, yes, 1.5 versus 2.5 versus 3. We're going to reinforce the one we want. Everything else is on extinction. Differential reinforcement is extremely versatile and something we're going to be using day in and day out to teach so many different things. So our answer, of course, is going to be none of the above. We can teach all of these using differential reinforcement. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube for all of our video updates. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shoutout. Work hard, study hard.